Well, greetings, Brother Hardin. It's good to see you and welcome you into ISITHU, where we talk about advice, rites of passage for young black men and fathers. And first, let's just start off. How long have you been an Omega Man?
Well, first of all, good brother William Smith, good to meet you. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir.
This fine holiday weekend. I've been on an Omega Man since 1992, and we're coming up on next year. My line will celebrate our 30th year, so I'm coming on 30 years. Good
All
brother.
right. All
Yeah,
right. It's good to have your service for 30 years in Omega. So let's talk about your service to society. Now, I understand you work in the construction industry. What
I
got
do.
you into that?
Construction, man, it's been a good run. I've been in construction about as long as I've been in Omega. I've been in construction almost 30 years. Well, actually, I've exceeded 30 years. It's 31 years now, and I've been an entrepreneur in the construction industry for 30. I'm sorry, for 20 years.
Okay.
Started my business 20 years, and I've been around the country doing construction. Um, Kind of what got me into it. It was somewhat of in kind of an accident, inadvert career change. I thought I was going to be an architect, and when I got hired by the company that I worked for at the beginning, they said, "Don, we have two, uh, ways to get into this business. We can start you out in design, or we can start you out in construction." And because my degree was in architectural engineering, I had done a lot of uh, design board stuff, and I wanted to see construction. So I chose to go the construction route initially. And this company is a large company. Matter of fact, it was the largest construction company in the nation when I hired on in back in 1990. And when I chose construction, I also did that for a couple of years, and then I went back into design within the company, but I like construction so much I kind of stayed on that path. So, um, um, you know, right out of college, I got hired by this company, worked for them for about 10 years or so, and then left them and started my own business. And I've worked construction everywhere you can do it on the owner's side as an owner's rep, as a general contractor, and even as a subcontractor. So I've seen construction from different directions.
Well, you and I share a common interest. When I first was going to college, my major that I wanted to choose was architecture, right? And
Okay.
unfortunately, the school kind of lied to me because they wanted me there as a football player, and they
Yeah.
didn't have the program like they really said they had. And
Mhm.
so, but architecture has always been an interest of mine. So we do share that. But I went into psychology, and I've been happy ever since. So despite the lie, it was a great outcome. But I can't go any further without talking about influencers. You got four great men behind you that we both love and
Oh
have
yeah.
they've influenced Omega, the founders of Omega. They've influenced society. But now let's connect that back to um, construction. Did you have any influences there?
Of course. First of all, I share your idea of wanting to be in architecture and kind of misguided. But I think that influencers, just like you probably were influenced by getting into psychology, you had a good reason or some kind of influence or influencer probably encouraged you in that direction. Same with me. Of course, my original influencer was my mother, really.
Okay.
Just kind of saying, hey, she wasn't the one that said, hey, I want you to do this career. She kind of like, let me decide that. But other influences, because I did have a love of art and a love of architecture. And then the art and the architecture kind of was bridged by my math teacher. It was one of my first influencers in school. So I tell kids all the time, even though that math teacher or your teachers don't seem to be maybe high on your list of as mentors because you're kind of looking to the next level already. But your elementary, high school teachers are actually your first mentors, And I didn't really understand that until I looked back and said, okay, how did I get in this business? My math teacher kind of encouraged me to drop art. I had finished taking all my math. He encouraged me to take a higher level of math. And so I had to drop art to take this class. This class toured Tennessee State University
Okay.
and their engineering program. And I got excited about that. And that's kind of how I first got into architectural engineering. And then from there, believe it or not, my one of my next mentors was a bruh. His name is Walter Vincent.
Okay.
He actually was the first graduate from the architectural engineering program at TSU at Roadside. And and whenever homecoming would come around, if you didn't know he was a Q then all of a sudden he just pops out of the closet with all this paraphernalia on. You're like, oh, this is cool. Mr. Vincent's a Q. So and then our dean of engineering was a Q. He was an Omega, and just like you said, these gentlemen behind me, they represent the highest of the high of their fields. And so it only made sense for me to think about being the not just existing in the field, but being the best in the field because of who we had to follow behind, those good influencers. And
That's
they
right.
kept going, they kept going.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about how you kept going. You know, um, Tennessee State University, great institution. Roadside chapter, great chapter there. Many great men have come out of it. My elementary school principal was a
Hmm.
roadside brother.
Okay.
And when I was coming home from college, I went up to Lens Crafter, saw him coming out, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Bourne, how are you doing?" And he saw a necklace, a pendant, and it was the shield.
Okay.
And he
Okay.
said, "Come here." He called me Smitty. He said, "Come here,
Okay.
Smitty." And he knew my mother. They grew up together and was in
Okay.
education. My mother's a teacher.
All
And
right.
so he said, "Come here." And he gave me the grip and he said, "Roadside." And he had a pledge in the late 50s, I believe. But I mean,
Wow.
so it's, you see these great Omega men all over the place that you never know that they were Omegas until something happens. So
Hmm.
you've done a lot of great things based on my research. Let's talk about some of those great projects that you're proud of that you've done in your life.
Well, I have been fortunate to work on a lot of projects in my career. I think in construction, it's one of those kind of industries you never really get the best of the best until you are willing to move around. So unfortunately, one of my best, excuse me, assets is my wife, Tracy. Tracy and I, we've been married 31 years this week, in fact.
Oh,
And
happy anniversary.
thank you. And she was always willing to kind of help my career along. I mean, she was, well educated young lady and a master's degree while we were out there doing our thing. But she was always willing to travel when we finished one project. We finished projects in a lot of different places like upstate New York, Oswego, New York, where when they first told me my first assignment was in New York, I got excited until I went and looked on the map, and Oswego is way away from New York City, right? I'm like,
That's right.
I'm ready to be in a big city, but I'm not in a big city. But we started out in Oswego, New York, worked on an aluminum plant. So right away, I'm working on big projects. Left Oswego and moved to Birmingham, Alabama. Worked on another metals project, large plant, multi-million dollar expansions. Left there and went back to the home office in Greenville, South Carolina, where I did design. Left there and went to Chicago, Illinois. Worked on Nabisco. They're making cookies and their plants and expanding. And we also did the 911 for the city of Chicago.
Okay.
So that involved putting a lot of fiber in the ground and overseeing that kind of construction. Left there and then went to work for Mercedes on the Mercedes Benz plant,
Mm.
where our company, Fluor Daniel, is the company I'm talking about, built the first headquarters for Mercedes Benz to be in the United States, and so it was a big deal. They had 966 acres that we took from the ground up and turned it into an automotive plant. And I couldn't have had those opportunities had I not been willing to go and move and take that challenge and not stay in the comfort zone. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I tell some of the younger guys now. So in order for you to do big things, number one, you definitely have to have God in your life. Omega, we believe in God, right? And then you have to follow His lead. You have to be willing to go where where the opportunities are. And for me, my wife was able to move around when I said, "Hey, it's an opportunity here in this city," and then we took it as a challenge and opportunity to go see something new. We were young in our marriage, and we were able to go in other places. And when I would get home from work, good brother, she would know all the shortcuts and backdrops and where to go and where to eat and do things and buy. So she took advantage. She embraced it like that.
Right.
And so and when she embraced the city like that, of course, makes my job easier to go to work every day. I'm not worried about whether she's really happy about where we are.
Right.
So look back, it's like that's been a big part of it too. Um, but other projects I worked on, leading into being an entrepreneur, after leaving our last stop before we left and started our own firm, it was Albuquerque, New Mexico. We built several expansions for Intel, where they make most of the computer chips, Pentium chips at the time. And so we moved back to Nashville. One of these mega churches actually kind of called me back. One of my line brother
Mm-hmm.
was he was the building committee chairman, and he threw out the idea of me moving back to Nashville. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really interested. I just got promoted over the site as a site manager for where I'm working. My wife and I just built the house. We're good. We're not going to move. But when he said, hey, okay, why don't you just come and meet the folks? It'll be free trip home because I'm from Nashville. Bruh, I came home, met the pastor of the church, met the folks in the church, and met the architect who was he was kind of one of my proteges, one of the guys I looked up to. He was not really a direct mentor, but he was somebody that I admired as an architect in the city. He
Mm-hmm.
was the architect over the job. And then the site, they had bought 22 acres. And something came over me, something spiritual said. And when somebody in the organization said, Don, we really heard about you and we can't get this church built, without you being here. It was like something came over me. And I called my boss in Dallas and said, at first I told my wife, hey, we need to move back home, convince her we need to come back home. I said, I'll build you another house. Promise you that. And and so we did. We moved back to Nashville and we built that church. And from there, as an entrepreneur, we've been doing a lot of great things since then. Helped build a Nissan plant in Canton, Mississippi. Vanderbilt University did expansions with them. HCA Health, uh, Hospital Corporations of America. We did work with them, as a small contractor and kind of a consultant. I had contracts directly with them, whereas a lot of companies would be knocking at those doors and couldn't get in. Some kind of way, we were able to get into all these places. We built the baseball park for the city. We built what's called the Music City Center, which is the convention center. So we teamed up with other companies to do these big projects. And finally, one of my one of my most recent treasures is the National Museum of African American Music, which is a international treasure. People are coming from everywhere to visit this place.
Right.
So we were able to work on all these projects.
And you've done some impressive stuff in your career with these projects. You know,
Thank
with
you.
all of the successes that we have and the road that we travel, it's not always paved smoothly. It'll
It
have
is not.
stones, bricks,
Hmm.
wood, all type of debris. What were some of those setbacks that you might have had, and it might just have been a setback to spring you forward into greater things? How did you persevere?
Man, it is really literally too many to even tell all of them. But they're because I'm really thinking about writing a book about it because I'm fortunate to have some younger men in the organization that I'm training. I've had a couple of young ladies too, and to try to groom. and whatever they want to learn about that, about this industry I'm teaching. As a black individual, it's definitely hard. Is people loosely term construction as a white man's type of business.
Right.
It can be a lot of money involved. It can be a lot of risk involved, and so overcoming a lot of the risk and challenges, we've had things on every project. Each project, you're going to have some stories to tell. But for me personally, it's proven. It's all about proving yourself over and over again. One quick story. Um, I had a mentor. This is a good man. He was an Omega. He was a Sigma guy, and we joke about it all the time. But he was one of the guys who had risen to be like a president of a division of Fleur Daniel, which is really rare for a black man to do. And he actually recruited me. He came to TSU on a recruiting trip. He and another brother recruited me from Tennessee State back when I did, and he decided to be my mentor. So
Mm-hmm.
he, kind of took me under his wings. And good brother Smith, you have to understand when we go from one project to the next in a big company like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's 35,000 employees. So it has to be, you have to have a connection, you have to have a mentor and connections with other people within the company. So my mentor decided that once I finished the first project in Oswego, New York, it went well. He, liked what I was doing, and he was going to place me on. He was over the what we call the metals and mining division, and he placed me. He was going to put me over a project on the metals and on in what we call it was Logan Aluminum at the time in Logan, Kentucky, Russellville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
So on that project, it was already a major expansion, like a $250 million rolling mill expansion. The client decided to do another project at the same time. It was a smaller project. It was a $27 million project.
Wow.
Well, the project manager, White Cat, over the over the project, but he was still under direction of our director. His name was DeWitt Porter. That's the segment I told you about, my mentor. So DeWitt's job as a project director was to place people on a high level on the project, right? So being my mentor, he placed me as one of the first people on that $27 million expansion, right? To be over this what we call the CSA, civil structural architectural portion of the work. The project manager, who was over the other part, kind of resented that because he wanted to be able to handpick his own people, right? He wanted to pick his boys. So I can remember how rough it was because I was a kind of guy who would always keep a diary of what's going on, like a daily diary. I would keep the weather, like it's 30 degrees. So you keep a diary and what happened and who showed up on the job and that kind of thing. And I had this diary that I kept. And one time when the project went awry, somebody was trying to claim that they did what they did, and they didn't do what they said they did, and I had it documented. And the project manager over the other job, his name was Stewart. And so Stewart was, when I would go to meetings and tell him certain things, he would say stuff to me like, "Oh, I know more than I forgot more than you ever know." It was just unwelcoming kind of talk, right? Here I am trying to fit in, and this guy is saying all these crazy comments, like hidden racism kind of stuff to me, right? Um, so once we came up on that issue and we got in the room and I pulled out my diary, I had all this documentation of what the contractor didn't do. It was almost like I was like this little prince to him. Like it was like wow, he totally saw me totally different.
Right.
Um, and so after that project, when you leave a project, we have called project release dates, right? And I was released from that project, and they threw me a party, a lunch, like celebrate my leave. Now later on, the guy thought so much of me when it was time to build a Mercedes Benz plant. He was over that project. He called me from Chicago, the White Cat. Now he likes me. He calls me from Chicago and asked me to come down and oversee a certain part of the project.
Wow.
So it's one of those, and I have many stories like that where you have to prove yourself
Yes.
over and over again. and it is a good old boys network. And even as an entrepreneur, the guy would call me from time to time and say, Don, when are you going to stop playing entrepreneur and come back to work with me? And I'm like, Stuart, I'm serious. I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm happy to come and do work for you as a company, but coming to work for you again, it's not going to happen. So,
Mhm.
but it's that's part of, we maintain relationships, but that was a story that we kind of overcame a situation that could have gone a different direction.
Mhm. Now, I mean, that's fascinating. Now, tell me, how does the Don Hardin story connect to young black men and older black men and fathers? What can they learn from your story that can help them through the pathway to successes, to fulfill the goals that they have? Because uh, I don't know if you realize, but we've talked about manhood, we've talked about scholarship,
Hmm.
we talked about perseverance, and we are talking about uplift in your last points. So, how can someone be uplifted from the Don Hardin story?
Well, definitely. I'm not the first one. I certainly won't be the last one that goes through a career and tries to be successful. So it's definitely all about giving back. I think one thing about it is like I said, a, I have 4 or 5 young guys, and one of them happens to be a and sometimes, and when we go through our stories about a daily, we recognize the omega situation, how you persevere through things. But you have to have the mentality that you're going to see the end, right? It's like anything else. When blessings are out there and you're about to be blessed, but you throw in the towel too soon.
Mm.
And so the other thing that's scary too, from what I have a 27-year-old son who played soccer growing up, and some of these types of industries, similar to the sport of soccer, it can feel like it's not for black kids, right? It can feel like it's not for you if you don't look and see the rest of the world is big in a sport like soccer. And some of these coaches who have kids playing, they want their sons to be the stars, right?
Right.
To the point that it can discourage a kid from being from they can be great at it, and they don't get the support, and they can actually quit doing it. I've seen that happen in construction too. So when folks are around folks and they don't have mentors or anybody to tell them that they're going to be okay. They made a mistake about, just like we do every day. You make a mistake in choosing the wrong material, or the wrong price, or you miss something, change orders, whatever. You make mistakes, but that doesn't mean you quit the profession, right? So you should you should stick with it and get better. So I think that the real lesson is don't look at it like if you come up short that day, you still got tomorrow, that you got another project to look at to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that the key is to take the lessons that I've learned and try to share them, but also let people understand they're going to have their own lessons to learn. They're going to have their own shortcomings, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the day. It just means that just another bridge, another rock to just put in front of you to get to the next step, right?
Right. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's powerful, and given all the good fortune that you've had, um, college graduate, 31-year marriage, father-in-law who's an Omega,
Yeah.
can't get any better than that.
Right.
Multi-million dollar projects, your own company. What's next in the life for a Don Hardin?
You know, we think I still think there's fun to be had. I mean, I think when I realize these projects and you trying to please everyone else in your circle as far as delivering a project, right? So I used to think that when people talk about failed projects, and I used to say, I don't know what that is. All my projects are going to be on time, on budget, whatever. But if you at it long enough, you will have failed projects, right? Just maybe they're over budget, or maybe they took longer than the owner wanted, and you stress out about that. And so now what's next for me is continue to find ways to have fun in what I'm doing in construction, but also I have some side hustles that I want to exercise in that. Like, so in construction, we have to wear high visibility clothing, right? So before, when I first got into the business, the only folks that wore high visibility were the guys who were doing ditches in the roadway, so you could see them, right? So just reflective stuff they could see. Now everybody has to wear high visibility. So I've worked with a couple of partners, create a clothing line for construction that's dedicated to high visibility and it's cooler, and the younger folks can kind of gravitate to it. So I'm looking for fun stuff like that to do, but of course I want to grow my company and pass the ball to the younger guys, but I'm still looking to have fun and doing what we do.
All right, that's great. So, as we close out, can you give a final word to young men and another word to older men and fathers? What's your best
Absolutely.
advice?
Absolutely. For the older guys, find the time to share your talent with others, um, no matter what it is. Everybody can't, be a doctor or a lawyer or even a contractor, if you will. And sometimes, we think that because we haven't traveled those roads, we have a lot of wisdom as older gentlemen to give back. We have lots of fatherly wisdom, and I talk to everybody from in my camp, from guys putting dirt in the ground to board members of some organization, and there's a common ground, and everybody brings something to the table as older gentlemen and senior and seasoned veterans and seasoned individuals and good omega men, and we got something to give back no matter who we are. So I would challenge the older guys and fathers to keep giving back and keep sharing the stories, the good and bad, the wins and losses to younger ones. Now, to the younger guys, as they pick out what they want to do, make sure they're going to enjoy what they do. I think that the thing with it is if you enjoy what you do, you have a high, whatever, wherever you land, if you enjoy what you do, then you have a high chance of being successful at it and doing your best at it and having you really hop out of bed every Monday when it's time to uh, to go to work. I have one of these sayings, and that I want to leave young men with is get up on your feet like your seat's hot. On Mondays, it's like have something that gets you up and that you really want to go and tackle and share and do and achieve the best you can achieve in whatever field that is.
Well, Brother Hardin, it was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I'm sure that all the viewers have gotten a lot out of this opportunity for us to share with them. So, thank you.
Brother Smith, I really appreciate what you're doing for the community. This is very important that you take the time out of your day to reach out to many of us who have stories to share. You could be doing other things, but you're trying to bridge the gap, and that's what Omega is all about. So I appreciate you as well.
Thank you. That's all about bridge building.
It is
Right.
good
Thank you,
stuff.
Brother
You,
Hardin.
thank you, Brother Smith.
So, let me stop the recording.